This is day 2 of the August 93 7-day retreat at Springwater. Two questions stand out among all that have been asked. And one is, what is inquiry? What is questioning? And the other is, what is fear? How can and does one live with fear? Can it end? So maybe we can use the second question by going into it together to illuminate what is inquiry, what is questioning, not by talking about it, what we mean by inquiry or by questioning, but by inquiring and questioning together. Maybe just to say briefly that the way questioning or inquiry is used here is not in our conventional sense of seeking immediate answers, usually on the verbal, written or spoken level. But to begin to look and listen in the light of a question, or in the presence of a question, not answering it. That prevents looking and listening and investigating oneself. Then no opening happens because one lives with what one knows or what other people have told one. So what is fear? How does one live with fear? Is it possible for fear to end? Question was even raised whether it can end forever. Can one be done with fear forever? Right now, just listening to this rain, the sound and feel and smell of it. Does the mind want to inquire into fear? Or just remain with the listening of the wind and rain, the cawing, and the rhythm of one's own breathing? Not having had much rain in a long time, this feels so wonderful, so soothing, so right, so good. Yet if one lived right now in the Midwest, where it has rained for maybe 8 weeks, thousands of people having lost their homes and homesteads, this sound would sound different, wouldn't it? And it may raise fear of losing more, or losing what one hasn't lost yet. Fear about tomorrow, what will one do with all this loss? How will one live financially? What will one's home be like? If one ever will have another one. So what is fear? What does it mean to be afraid, to be anxious, to live in anguish? What does it involve? One may not be immediately conscious of it, but doesn't fear, as one looks at it, lives with it, experiments and investigates into it, always involve some memory, some thought, some imagery about what happened in the past or what I have heard happened to others in the present, which is the past. Because this moment is not known yet. The moment it becomes known, it is the past. So doesn't fear always involve some form of thought? And we're using the word generously, openly, to include all memory, verbal as well as non-verbal, all imagery, fantasy, imagination, dreams, as one process that can affect the organism or does affect the organism at any time to produce symptoms which are experienced as what we call fear. The imaginational fantasy, projection of thoughts into the future of what will happen to me or might happen to me. And it's endless. Each one can think for herself, himself. All the fearful specters, scenarios that can be dreamt up on the instant, imagined, thought about, and instantly, with almost no lapse of time, although there's some slight lapse of time, affecting through all kinds of chemicals and electrical impulses produced through brain and organism, affecting the organism, the organs, the glands, the muscles, the tissue, the heartbeat, the breath. Producing states of physical being which are felt quite generally as unpleasant or painful, noxious, burdensome, heavy, maybe at times felt to be impossible to bear. Are we together on this? Can experiment with it on the spot, imagining something that could happen to one on the basis that one has known or imagined or read, heard about in the past. And this thought, it need not be a thought train, it can be an individual single thought, can arouse the whole physical organism to a state of unpleasantness, pain. I want to make it as little conceptual as possible so it becomes clearer to the feel, to the touch. And it is this unpleasant sometimes seemingly unbearable feeling which has been aroused through the thought and image of what could happen to me and mine, what I identify with. It doesn't have to be my person, but everything I'm identified with, my family, my friends, my favorite acquaintances, groups, associations, my country, my holdings, my land, my farm, my reputation. Go on endlessly. One thought of this being in danger or threatened or insecure or unsure, the security of that unknown or in question, and the body manifests what it is programmed to manifest in the present of real danger. A mobilization of chemicals to arouse the organs, the muscles, the glands, to prepare for flight or fight or freezing. Because this has worked in our past history of animal survival, to flee or fight or freeze, play dead. And as long as real danger is there and the mobilization helps the body to do what it's needed to do in the presence of danger, there's no discomfort felt. There's just action, the immediacy of action. And usually a tremendous energy that goes with it, that is aroused to act clearly, appropriately now. And everything that the body mobilizes, it also uses. If any of us have watched some of the scenes of the recent floods in the Midwest, it was amazing to see the energy and goodwill and intelligent cooperation among the people to build their levees, to fill their sandbags, hand them on. Working at times around the clock. No sleepiness. Sleepiness was replaced by energetic doing to avert the danger. I don't think people felt displeasure at that time. It didn't look like it. It seemed to almost at times be some kind of euphoria of finally working together on something in one spirit, with one energy, as one body. Which also makes for the popularity of war, at least in certain phases, when one is winning. But sitting here in a retreat or waking up in the middle of the night at home, at work, wherever the thought may arise of what can happen to me, the uncertainty of my future, the bleakness of it. Everything that is mobilized has no place to go except bother us, weigh on us, feel sickening and noxious. I haven't mentioned all the fears which has come up in group meeting and also private meeting, all the fears connected with the image of myself, to which there is such unquestioned attachment until one begins to question the whole image making, the whole belief that one is this image collection. Until that is questioned, there is unquestioned belief in it that this is me. And the known tenuousness of my image, will I be accepted? Will someone else like it? Approve of it? Or put it down, hurt it, better it? compete with it, disregard it, humiliate it, or nurture it, approve of it and support it. And all the physical states, from elation and high energy to depression, feeling bummed out when one has been criticized or disapproved or not as efficient, as pretty, as good, as clever, as advancing as someone else. And then the fears also came up in meeting of making a fool of oneself in front of others, of not being accepted, which is all thinking conjecture, because we don't know how someone else feels about us. We may have clues, but the clues may be misinterpreted. In a black kind of a mood, we don't see clearly and interpret according to habit how we are received and seen and accepted or not accepted. It's all distorted when the mind is clouded with doubt and fear about itself referring to collections of images, past remembrances, and projections into the future. Right in this retreat there, quite a number, an amazing number of people who are finding themselves in a transition, moving someplace else from what was home, starting a new job or school, leaving a partner, and the uncertainty of it all, and with thinking about it, the fear that arises, sometimes maybe even panic or just a slight humming anxiety at the thought of what will happen to me, how will it go, how will I be able to take it? And then always the flashbacks of how it was, which maybe was more security or less, who knows. Our memories are not very accurate. They also depend on the mood in which we are reminiscing. They're all the fear connected with I may have done wrong, or I have done wrong in the past, or very recently. The fear of doing wrong in the future. Fear of being bad, guilty, being found out. It could go on endlessly, and it's all, without exception, what we have mentioned so far, based on thinking, remembering, imaging, knowing, which is all one very similar process of living in pictures, words, and memories, which may not just be located in the brain. It doesn't matter where they're located, whether throughout the body or in fields outside of the body. But memory, thought, and image has the power through previous association to immediately link with chemicals in the body which arouse states of fright or flight or aggression or anger. And if this connection is not clearly seen, which it is not most of the time until the attention really matures to see that connection. So many people argue with me. It's not thought. I'm not afraid because I don't see any thought. I wonder why we do so much fight the idea that it's thought. Do we want to be not just directed by thought? I don't know what it is. But at certain times in our life, we refuse this. Someone pointing it out. just because one hasn't seen it. It's so quick, but the physical state is very palpable, and one may not find any causal thought around it. And the physical state itself of displeasure, of discomfort, anxiety, restlessness, this physical state itself signals to the brain, watch out, there's something to be afraid of. There's some danger around here, because I wouldn't feel this way if there wasn't danger. So the state itself, regardless of the thoughts that triggered it, generates new thoughts about possible danger. And the brain can find endless ones in its endless files of fearful past situations, painful, fearful past incidences. How nice if the rain could wash it all off. And what has been described, and please let me say, I can never ever say the whole thing. I will leave out things. If we need to talk about different situations, that's what meetings are for. I don't mean intentionally to exclude things. I may not be aware of situations that hold for someone else, that I have not come in touch with myself or through the people that we work with, we work together. So never the whole thing can possibly be covered. But it holds in one way or another what has been described here. The painful memories, the thoughts about what happened projected into the future, the imagery, triggering the organism in painful, dangerous states, fright or aggression, that holds for all human beings. It's not unique to any one of us. That in itself often is very relieving to realize that whether we live here or we've lived here 1,000 years ago, or we live in the north or south, in the west or east, or in between, human beings are afraid and have been afraid since time immemorial, particularly since the highly evolved capacity to think and imagine, which most animals have not evolved until this development happened. We don't know to what degree they have. I don't want to be expert on this. I'm not. But the beauty of watching animals is the freedom from a lot of baggage. Maybe if animals have lived with humans for a long time, the baggage begins to build up in cats and dogs, pets. But in nature, in a still relatively unimpacted environment, animals seem to be going about their business in a very attentive way, not carrying fears about past or future with them that affect their grace in walking, running, or flying, swimming, moving so freely. So, fear, being afraid, living with fear, is our human common lot. May have happened before we were born. Already, one woman told me once, remembering her mother pounding her belly, she brought up this intrauteral memory being pounded. But for most of us, maybe the first fear was this exit from paradise through a dark passage with all kinds of cramps and pressures that hadn't been there before. And then finding oneself in a totally different environment. What a transition that was from home to a new place. I don't think we can match it. From warm and moist and all contained to cold and dry and not so soft. Clothes on oneself instead of fluids. And the dawning of separation that happens, not being at one. Are we at one with this rain? Just let it rain. So without wanting to go through enumerating all the things that happen to little children, I've done it many times in retreats. Everyone knows something about it, maybe remembers it, maybe not remembers it, but sees it in children around one. The constant or almost constant things that happen that arouse fear. Maybe an angry parent, an angry brother or sister. Something frightening happening. Even in the best balanced, harmonious family. Frightening things happen. Maybe if not in the family, then outside of the family, what one witnesses elsewhere or in the country one lives. This mind here is so often these days just trying to enter into what happens to children in that unfortunate country of Bosnia. Will these children ever be normal? Whatever that is, meaning for even one instant free of fear. I think I went through a war myself, but this situation, the way it is presented or pictured, and these pictures you can say, yes, cameramen pick special things, but what is taken is real. People they run in a crouched position, hovering, and still being shot down. Mothers in front of children, siblings in front of sisters and brothers. Constant shelling, constant violence, no assurance of one's home. It may be gone. Now one finds oneself as a refugee, and people don't want me. They will put my house on fire or chase me out, kill me. Will there ever be, will these people ever be able to live or deal with this immense fear of living and of dying? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Although having grown up myself as an exceedingly frightened child, with a very vivid imagination of what would, it could, and very likely was going to happen to me, my family, with the persecutions and the war, the raids, the air raids. Always worrying about something, about somebody. It's an amazing fact that all this very habitually, very deeply ingrained, and wherever it's deposited or was deposited, anxiety and fear can be totally in abeyance. But not through thinking one's way out of it. That's one thing that is completely, clearly understood. That fear, which is based on memory and thinking and projecting and imagining, cannot be cured by more memory, more thinking, more imagining and projecting or fantasizing. It needs an entirely different new energy. Which is not the energy of thought and remembrance, with its triggering mechanisms throughout the organism. It is the energy of being here now, completely, with the rain and the sound and feel of the breeze, the birds and the wet grass and dripping trees. Not as an escape, but as a fact of being here, as a presence. And out of this presence, with its undivided energy, which illuminates and sheds light, can we look at fear? In this case, maybe just the memory of fear, of a frightening, frightful, anxious moment or time. Or if fear is in effect right now in you or someone, can we look at it right now out of a presence of listening and looking, which has never been, which is new every moment? And what is seen in this evoking memory of frightful moments, painfully frightful moments, what is seen is that any more thinking about it, about the frightful incidents that caused it, will just keep increasing or continuing the state, the physical state which we call fear. Sometimes people who have listened to talks conclude that being with fear, as it is sometimes put, means thinking more about it, thinking more about what caused the fear and projecting more, just continuing with the train of thought that is starting and sustaining this whole misery. And that's not what is meant by being with it, by remaining with it. Because it becomes very clear that the more thinking about it, the more the organism keeps responding in its dutiful way of preparing the body to deal with the physical danger. And just saying to oneself, well, this is all thought and image and imagination, and it all deals with time, fear is time. Thinking that and saying it to each other also doesn't help, does it? Why sometimes someone feels this whole work, what you talk about, hasn't helped my fear at all. Why not? Is it because one thought about thought and image? And thinking does not resolve the results of thinking. Thinking does not resolve thinking. It just goes on and on and on. So what does it mean? Well, I don't like to use these words, to be with something, because this implies a duality. Someone who has this fear, and then the fear, and then I have to be with that fear. This is a very complex and not accurate way of putting it. And yet our language is dualistic. Very difficult to find terms that express the non-duality of this state of what we call fear. It is not the word. And yet the word fear triggers chemicals in the organism. So can there be abstaining from the word and the description, the concept of fear and anxiety, in just letting this thing be and unfold and show itself as it manifests physically in response to thought and memory? Without the word rain, without the word fear, can whatever is there show itself, manifest in the light of a careful, open listening and looking and sensing? This open listening, looking, contacting is not of judgment. It is very empty, has no judgment in it, no resistance, no wanting to be rid of the thing or wanting to hold on to it. It's just awareness, light, insight. The words are not the real thing. It's just maybe better to say what it is not. It's not judgmental, not wanting to be done with it once and forever. No reaction at all to what has just been called fear and what is now allowed to just be there and show itself, be felt and heard and seen in a new way which is not reactive, not looking for remedies, not looking for an ending or for a beginning, just what's there. What is that? And one may feel the resistance coming up to touch it, to feel it, because that's been there all one's life. The fright in the eyes of our parents or elders or people of authority around us, teachers, older brothers and sisters, has communicated itself to this organism. Don't touch, run away, hide yourself, protect yourself. And I'm not talking right now about real danger, but this feeling of this organism here, which we call our own. We don't get in touch with it when it feels awful, painful, frightened. We don't allow it to be openly exposed in what it is manifesting because of conditioned habits of escape. And these conditioned habits of escape and resistance can come into awareness in and of themselves. And once in awareness, they don't need to continue. Resistance to the way this organism feels need not continue when it's seen to be divisive and separating. Prolonging the agony. Because all the separation that happens in the wake of fear increases the agony. So how is separation to end? You notice we have all along have had questions. We're inquiring together and then looking. Making statements at times which need to be tested by each one of us, whether it is so or not. And the last question was, how is separation to end? Which is the fundamental rock bottom of the line disease of human beings. Feeling of separation. Me from my fear, me from others who I'm afraid of. Me from my God who could punish me for what I did. Me from nature that I cannot contact because I have images of her. Can separation end? Meaning there's just what is, just this. Pouring, dripping, gushing rain, not the words, but what's happening, what is heard, and the hearing. And this body which may feel so agonized and icky with what has been called fear, it's there in the midst of the rain and the clouds and the land and the hills and the stars and animals and other galaxies. It's there. What is it? There can be the birth of a fresh looking and listening, which is uncontaminated by judgment and fear and wanting. And that sheds light on fear and wanting and judging in a new way. In a non-separating, freeing way. So that the energy of resistance and fighting or escaping sort of, it neutralizes and merges with the energy of attention. Which is the energy of the rain. Of everything. this question comes up. Why do we want to get rid of anything forever? That's clearly thought, isn't it? But what's here now is there and can expose itself and be felt, seen, and heard. Now. And now, and now, and now, and now. We will end here for today.